The rain fell hard on the border town of New Hope, a small settlement where humans and aliens lived side by side since the Great Contact 15 years ago. Most of the aliens had proper homes and jobs, but not everyone was so lucky. Lena huddled under a makeshift shelter of plastic sheets and bent metal. Her purple skin, normally bright and shiny, looked dull in the dim light. Small bumps along her forehead, the marks of her species, twitched as she listened for trouble. She was only 16 years old by Earth counting, but she had been alone for 3 Earth years already. The other members of her kind, the Norians, stayed on the nice side of town. They didn't want to know about the girl who couldn't afford the treatments that kept their skin bright and their voices soft. Lena was an embarrassment to them, a reminder of how close they all were to ending up on the streets. "Move along! This area is being cleared!" A loud voice made Lena jump. 2 police officers, 1 human and 1 Norian, were moving through the alley, telling everyone to leave. "But where will we go?" asked an old human man next to Lena. "The town council has set up a shelter on South Street," said the human officer. He didn't sound mean, just tired. "It's only for 3 days, then you can come back." Lena grabbed her small bag containing everything she owned, a broken translator that sometimes worked, a photo of her parents, and a small stone from her home planet. She couldn't go to the shelter. The Norians there would see her, and the shame would be too much. She walked through the rain, her 3-toed feet splashing in puddles. Her stomach hurt from hunger. It had been 2 days since she had found enough food in the trash behind the big restaurant. As she turned a corner, she saw a bright light coming from a junkyard. A tall fence surrounded piles of broken machines, old furniture, and scraps of metal. But there was a hole in the fence just big enough for someone small like her. Lena squeezed through and looked around. Maybe she could find something to sell or use. As she walked deeper into the junkyard, she spotted a small shed with a light on inside. She crept closer, careful not to make noise. Through a dirty window, she saw a human man working on something. He was in his 40s, with messy brown hair and strong hands that moved quickly, putting pieces together. Suddenly, he looked up and saw her. Lena froze. She should run, but her legs wouldn't move. The door opened, and the man stepped out. "Hello there," he said. His voice was quiet and gentle. Lena's translator crackled and gave her the words in her language. She didn't respond. "You're soaking wet," the man said. "Do you want to come in? I have some food." Food. The word made her stomach hurt even more. But she had learned to be careful with kind offers. "Why?" she asked, her voice coming out in a strange mix of her language and the human one. The man smiled. "Because it's raining, and you look hungry, and I'm alone out here with too much soup." He stepped back inside, leaving the door open. Lena waited, then slowly followed. The shed was warm and filled with interesting things, tools, parts, and drawings pinned to the walls. "I'm Tom," the man said, pouring something hot into a cup. "What's your name?" "Lena," she whispered, taking the cup carefully. It smelled good. "Nice to meet you, Lena. Are you from the settlement? I haven't seen many Norians around here lately." She drank the soup before answering. It was the best thing she had tasted in months. "They don't come to this side. I live nowhere now." Tom didn't look surprised or disgusted. He just nodded and gave her more soup. "I build things," he said, pointing to a strange machine in the corner. "The town pays me to fix their equipment, but at night, I make my own projects." Lena looked at the machine with interest. On her home planet, she had been good at fixing things before everything went bad. "You can stay here tonight if you want," Tom said. "It's dry at least. I'll be gone in the morning, got work to do, but you can rest." Lena didn't know what to say. No one had been kind to her in so long. "Why help me?" she asked again. Tom looked out the window at the rain. "Someone helped me once, when I needed it. That's how it should work." He pointed to a small cot in the corner. "Sleep if you want. I'll be working for a while." That night, Lena slept without fear for the first time in years. She didn't know it yet, but her life was about to change forever. Lena woke to the sound of metal clanging against metal. The small cot had been surprisingly comfortable, and she had slept longer than intended. Sunlight streamed through the dusty windows of the shed, illuminating dancing dust particles in the air. Tom was already back, working at his bench. His large hands carefully connected wires inside a strange-looking device. He hummed a tune Lena didn't recognize. "Good morning," he said without looking up. "There's food on the table if you're hungry." Lena saw a plate with bread and some kind of yellow fruit. Her stomach growled, and she quickly ate while watching Tom work. "What are you making?" she asked when she finished eating. Her translator crackled slightly, but the words came out clearly enough. Tom pushed his chair back and stretched. "A water purifier. The ones the government gave us break down too easily. I'm trying to make one that lasts longer." He looked at her with curious eyes. "How did you end up alone? Norians usually stay with their family groups." Lena looked down at her three-toed feet. "My parents died in the ship crash 3 years ago. The other Norians took in the children with important parents. I was not important." The words hurt to say, even after all this time. Tom nodded, his face serious. "I understand being the unimportant one. It's not an easy place to be." He stood up and walked to a large pile of metal pieces in the corner. "I need to sort these parts today. Want to help? I'll pay you." Lena's eyes widened. "A job? With money?" She nodded quickly. "Good. I need these sorted by metal type. Can you tell the difference between copper and aluminum?" She smiled for the first time in months. "On my world, I helped in my father's repair shop. I know metals." She picked up a piece. "This is copper. This one is aluminum. This one is. I don't know your word for it." Tom looked impressed. "That's a titanium alloy." "Very good." He handed her a pair of gloves. "These might be big, but they'll protect your hands." For the next few hours, they worked side by side, sorting metals into bins. Tom explained what he was building and why, and Lena found herself enjoying the work. It reminded her of home, of better times. At midday, Tom stopped and paid her 20 credits. "Come back tomorrow if you want more work," he said. "I have plenty to do." Lena clutched the money, more than she had held in months. "I will come back," she promised. As she turned to leave, she noticed a blueprint pinned to the wall. It showed a small structure, like a tiny house. "What is that?" she asked, pointing. Tom glanced at the drawing. "Oh, that? It's a micro-home design I've been working on. Built from recycled materials mostly. Just an idea for now." Lena studied the design. "It's small but clever. The way you use the space." She pointed to a section. "This could be better if you moved this wall." Tom raised his eyebrows and came closer to look. "You might be right. Are you good with designs too?" She shrugged. "I understand how things fit together." Tom looked at her thoughtfully. "Interesting. Very interesting." He seemed to be making a decision. "Listen, I have a proposition for you. I need help with several projects, and you clearly know what you're doing. Would you be interested in regular work? You could stay here if you want. There's a storage room in the back I could clean up." Lena couldn't believe what she was hearing. A job and a place to stay? It seemed too good to be true. "Why would you do this?" she asked, suspicious again. Tom put down his tools. "Because I need the help, and you need a break. Simple as that." He pointed to his legs. "Plus, I lost this one in an accident." He knocked on his right leg, which made a hollow sound. "It's a prosthetic. Someone helped me when I was at my lowest. Now I do the same when I can." Lena thought about her options. She could go back to the streets, hungry and afraid, or she could take a chance on this strange human who built things from junk. "I will stay," she decided. "I will help you build." Tom smiled. "Good. Let's get that room cleaned up for you, then. Tomorrow, we start on something big." For the first time since the crash, Lena felt a small spark of hope growing inside her. Maybe, just maybe, her life wasn't over after all. Morning came with clear skies and warm sun. Lena woke early, excited to start her first full day of work. She found Tom already outside, clearing a flat area in the junkyard. "Good morning," he called when he saw her. "Sleep well?" Lena nodded. The small storage room wasn't much, but Tom had put in a real bed with clean blankets. It was the best place she had slept in years. "What are we doing today?" she asked, joining him in the cleared space. Tom pointed to the ground where he had marked out a rectangle with string and small metal stakes. "This is where we'll build your home. First, we need to level the ground and prepare the foundation." Lena looked at the marked area with confusion. "My home? I thought I was staying in the storage room." Tom smiled and pulled out the blueprint she had seen yesterday. "That was temporary. This is the plan, a real home for you. Small but complete. We'll build it together." Lena felt a strange tightness in her chest. No one had offered to help her like this since her parents died. "Why would you build me a house?" Tom knelt down and smoothed the dirt within the string border. "Because everyone deserves a place that belongs to them. Plus, it's a good test for my designs. If we can build a comfortable home from recycled materials, maybe others will see it can be done." They spent the morning preparing the ground, making it flat and solid. Tom explained each step as they worked, how the foundation needed to be strong to support everything above it, how they would use concrete blocks he had salvaged from a demolished building downtown. At midday, they took a break to eat. Tom had packed sandwiches and fruit, which they shared in the shade of an old vehicle hull. "Tell me about your planet," Tom said as they ate. "What was your home like there?" Lena closed her eyes, remembering. "Beautiful. Our houses were round, not square like human buildings. They stayed cool even when the 3 suns were all in the sky. My father had a garden with blue flowers that sang when the wind blew through them." "Singing flowers?" Tom looked interested. "That sounds amazing. Many things sang on my world. The rocks, the plants, even some of the water pools." Lena sighed. "I miss the music." Tom was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he stood up suddenly. "I have an idea for your house. Come on." He led her to a pile of metal pipes of different lengths and thicknesses. "What if we use these as wind chimes around your house? We can tune them to make sounds when the breeze blows. Not the same as your singing flowers, but maybe a little reminder of home." Lena picked up one of the pipes. When she tapped it, it made a clear, sweet tone. "Yes," she said, feeling a small spark of joy. "I would like that." After lunch, they returned to the foundation area. Tom showed her how to mix cement in a small machine he had built himself. They worked together to set the concrete blocks in perfect rows. "Tomorrow this will be solid," Tom explained. "Then we can start on the frame." As they worked, Lena learned that Tom had been an engineer before losing his job when his company moved off-planet. Rather than leave, he had stayed in New Hope and started his recycling business. "Most people see junk," he told her as they sorted through a pile of metal beams. "I see possibilities. That broken refrigerator? Its cooling system can be repurposed. That old hover car? The engine parts are still good. Everything has value if you know how to look at it." By late afternoon, the foundation was complete. Lena stood back, looking at what they had accomplished in just one day. It wasn't much yet, just a rectangular outline of concrete blocks, but it was the beginning of something. "What do you think?" Tom asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. "It's small," Lena said honestly. Tom laughed. "Yes, it's a tiny house. But it will have everything you need: a bed, bathroom, kitchen, even a little area for projects. And the best part is, we're building it almost entirely from materials that would otherwise go to waste." As the sun began to set, they gathered their tools and headed back to the workshop. Lena felt tired, but in a good way, the kind of tired that comes from meaningful work. "Tomorrow we start on the frame," Tom said as they ate a simple dinner. "The metal beams we found last week will be perfect for it." That night, Lena lay in her bed, looking at the ceiling. In her mind, she could see the house taking shape, her house, built from things others had thrown away. Like her, those discarded pieces were getting a second chance. The thought made her smile as she drifted off to sleep. 3 weeks had passed since Lena started working with Tom. Their days fell into a comfortable pattern. They would wake early, share a simple breakfast, and then work until sunset. Lena learned something new each day: how to weld metal pieces together, how to test electrical circuits, and how to read Tom's detailed blueprints. The tiny house was taking shape quickly. The frame stood tall now, made from old metal beams Tom had collected over years. The walls were a patchwork of salvaged materials, pieces of old ships, discarded signboards, and sheets of metal from broken-down vehicles. It didn't look pretty yet, but Lena could see the potential. "We'll have the outer shell finished by the end of the week," Tom said as they took a break for lunch. "Then comes the fun part, making it actually livable." Lena nodded, feeling a rare sense of pride. She had contributed many ideas to the design, especially for the internal systems. Tom had been impressed by her knowledge of water recycling techniques, something the Norians had mastered centuries ago on their dry home world. "Tom," she said hesitantly, "I want to know something. When the house is done, what will happen to it?" Tom looked surprised by the question. "It's for you, Lena." "Didn't I make that clear? That's why we're building it to fit your needs." Lena's purple skin darkened with emotion, the Norian equivalent of blushing. "For me? But why would you do that?" "Because everyone deserves a place of their own," Tom said simply. "A safe place to call home." Before Lena could respond, they heard voices approaching the junkyard. Tom frowned and stood up. "That's strange. I'm not expecting anyone today." They walked outside to see 3 men standing at the entrance to the junkyard. 2 were human officials in neat uniforms. The third was a tall Norian male with expensive clothes and jewelry that marked him as an elder. "There she is," said the Norian, pointing at Lena. "The child I told you about." Tom stepped forward protectively. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" One of the human officials stepped forward. "I'm Inspector Davis from Child Protection Services. We received a report about an underage Norian living in unsuitable conditions." He looked around the junkyard with obvious disapproval. The Norian elder spoke in the smooth, musical voice typical of his kind. "This is Elder Morrow. I am responsible for all Norians in this district. This child should be with her own kind, not living in a garbage heap with a—" He looked at Tom with distaste. "With a human junk collector." Lena felt fear rising in her chest. Elder Morrow was one of those who had turned her away after her parents died, claiming there was no room for her in the Norian Community Center. Now suddenly he wanted to help? "I stay here because I want to," Lena said, her voice stronger than she expected. "Tom is teaching me skills. We are building something important." The second official, a woman with kind eyes, looked interested. "Building what, exactly?" Tom gestured toward the half-finished structure. "A home. For Lena. Using recycled materials and sustainable technology." The officials walked over to inspect the building. Elder Morrow stayed back, his face showing clear disgust at the piles of junk surrounding them. "This is quite impressive," the female official said, examining the blueprints Tom showed her. "You've incorporated some advanced systems here. Many of those were Lena's ideas," Tom explained. "She has a natural talent for engineering. The water recycling system is based on Norian technology." The officials spoke quietly between themselves while Elder Morrow paced impatiently. Finally, Inspector Davis turned to them. "Mr. Williams." "Tom Williams." "Mr. Williams, while your intentions seem good, there are protocols for housing alien minors. We'll need to conduct a full inspection and determine if this is an appropriate living situation." Elder Morrow stepped forward. "This is unnecessary. I am taking the girl back to her own kind. Our community will care for her properly." Lena couldn't stay quiet anymore. "You didn't want me before. None of you did. When my parents died, you said there was no place for me. Now you want to take me away from the only person who has helped me?" The officials looked surprised. The female official turned to Elder Morrow. Is this true? Was she turned away from your community? Elder Morrow's skin darkened with embarrassment. There were complicated factors. Limited resources. But we are prepared to receive her now. Now that someone else has done the hard work, Tom said quietly. Inspector Davis sighed. We'll need to sort this out properly. For now, we'll schedule a formal inspection of these living quarters for next week. If they meet safety standards, and if Lena wishes to remain here, we can discuss a formal guardianship arrangement. As the officials and Elder Morrow left, Lena trembled with a mix of fear and anger. What if they took her away? What if all their work was for nothing? Tom put a gentle hand on her shoulder. Don't worry. We'll make this work. They won't take you away if you don't want to go. Lena looked at the half-finished house, her future home, and nodded firmly. I want to stay. This is where I belong now. The week leading up to the inspection was the hardest Lena had ever worked. She and Tom spent every waking hour on the tiny house, determined to make it pass all safety requirements. Despite the looming threat of being separated, Lena found herself enjoying the rush of creation as they raced against time. Hand me that solar panel, Tom called from the roof. Lena carefully lifted the salvaged panel, one they had found behind an abandoned shop and painstakingly repaired, and passed it up to him. Perfect, he said, securing it in place. With this and the wind turbine, you'll have all the power you need, even on cloudy days. Inside the tiny house, things were coming together beautifully. They had installed the water recycling system, a compact kitchen area, and a comfortable sleeping space. Tom had even found an old holographic projector that they repurposed as both a light source and an entertainment system. It doesn't look like junk anymore, Lena said proudly as they stood back to admire their work. The outside might still look like a patchwork of salvaged materials, but the inside was cozy, functional, and perfectly suited to Lena's needs. That's because it never was junk, Tom replied. Just misunderstood resources waiting for the right purpose. The day before the inspection, news of their project had somehow spread through New Hope. A small crowd had gathered at the edge of the junkyard, curious to see what was happening. Some were humans, interested in Tom's sustainable building techniques. Others were Norians, surprised that one of their kind was involved in such an unusual project. Do you think they'll give me permission to stay? Lena asked quietly as they made final adjustments to the heating system. Tom wiped grease from his hands. The house meets all safety codes, I've triple-checked. The real question is whether they'll let me be your guardian. Lena hadn't thought about that part much. In her mind, she and Tom were already family of sorts. The idea that officials might not see it that way made her stomach twist with anxiety. What happens if they say no? Tom's face grew serious. Then we fight. Legally, I mean. I've already contacted a friend who specializes in interspecies adoption cases. He's prepared to help if needed. The morning of the inspection arrived with clear skies and bright sunshine, perfect for showcasing the solar panels. Inspector Davis arrived precisely on time, accompanied by the female official from before, whose name was Officer Martinez. Elder Morrow came as well, along with 2 other Norian officials. To Lena's surprise, a small crowd of townspeople had also gathered, staying respectfully at the junkyard entrance, but clearly interested in the outcome. Quite an audience, Inspector Davis noted as he approached the tiny house. Word spreads fast in New Hope. The inspection began with a thorough examination of the structure itself. Officer Martinez tested the stability of the walls and roof, while Inspector Davis checked the electrical systems. The wiring is excellent, he admitted, sounding impressed. Better than code, actually. Elder Morrow and the other Norians focused on the cultural aspects, checking if the home contained appropriate accommodations for Norian needs, like the special humidifier that helped mimic the atmosphere of their home world. This is unexpected, Elder Morrow said reluctantly as he examined the humidifier. You've incorporated traditional Norian design elements. Tom nodded. Lena taught me. She remembered how things were done in her parents' home. The inspection continued for nearly 3 hours. Every system was tested, every inch examined. Lena stood nervously to the side, answering questions when asked but otherwise staying quiet. This was the moment of truth. Finally, the officials gathered outside to discuss their findings. Lena and Tom waited anxiously, standing by the tiny house they had built together from almost nothing. When the officials returned, Inspector Davis spoke first. The structure exceeds safety requirements in most categories. The use of sustainable and recycled materials is innovative and environmentally responsible. He looked at his tablet. From a housing perspective, we find no issues. Lena felt a surge of hope, but she knew the housing was only part of the equation. Officer Martinez stepped forward. However, there is still the matter of guardianship. Mr. Williams, you have no previous experience as a guardian, and no formal training in interspecies care. Elder Morrow nodded firmly. The child would be better served among her own kind, where her cultural needs can be properly addressed. Tom started to argue, but before he could, something unexpected happened. From the crowd at the entrance, people began to step forward, both humans and Norians. Tom Williams taught my son how to repair engines, called out a human woman. He's the most patient teacher in New Hope. He fixed our community center's heating system for free last winter, added a Norian male. When no one else would help. One by one, residents of New Hope shared stories about Tom, his kindness, his skills, his willingness to help anyone, regardless of species. Lena watched in amazement as more and more people spoke up. The officials listened, visibly surprised by the outpouring of support. Even Elder Morrow seemed taken aback. As the stories continued, Lena realized that while she had been alone, Tom had been quietly building connections throughout the community, not through grand gestures, but through small, consistent acts of kindness. The morning after the inspection, Lena sat on the small front step of her nearly completed tiny house. The rising sun cast a golden glow across the junkyard, making even the piles of scrap metal look beautiful in the early light. She took a deep breath, still hardly believing yesterday's outcome. After hearing from so many community members, Inspector Davis had pulled Officer Martinez and Elder Morrow aside for a private discussion. Lena and Tom had waited anxiously, either daring to speak. When the officials returned, their faces gave nothing away. Based on our inspection and the testimony of community members, Inspector Davis had announced, we have made our decision regarding the guardianship of minor Lena. The pause that followed felt endless. Mr. Williams will be granted temporary guardianship for a probationary period of 6 months, after which a final determination will be made. He had looked directly at Tom. You will need to file formal paperwork, attend cultural sensitivity training specific to Norian customs, and allow monthly check-ins by our office. Elder Morrow had not looked pleased, but he did not object. Instead, he said something that surprised everyone. The Norian community will provide cultural guidance and support during this process. The child should not lose her connection to her heritage. Now, as Lena watched Tom approach with 2 steaming cups, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. Hot chocolate, Tom said, handing her a cup. Perfect for celebrating. Lena sipped the sweet drink carefully. Do you think they will let me stay after the 6 months? Tom sat beside her. I think we've proven we make a good team. And Elder Morrow's offer to help with cultural education was unexpected but welcome. He looked thoughtful. I think he realized that sometimes family isn't about who you were born to, but who chooses to stand by you. Like you did for me, Lena said quietly. And like you did for me. Tom gestured around the junkyard. Before you arrived, I was just a lonely man building things no one cared about. Now look at what we've accomplished. It was true. In just a few weeks, they had not only built a home from discarded materials but had also caught the attention of the entire town. Already, 3 families had approached Tom about building similar sustainable homes for them. We could help others, Lena suggested. Build more homes for people who need them. Tom nodded enthusiastically. I was thinking the same thing. Your water recycling system could help so many families in the dry season. And the modular design means we could adapt it for different species' needs. A knock at the junkyard gate interrupted their planning. To Lena's surprise, Elder Morrow stood there, alone this time and looking somewhat uncomfortable. Tom waved him in. "Good morning, Elder. What can we do for you?" Elder Morrow approached slowly, his formal robes looking out of place among the piles of salvage. "I came to speak with Lena." He turned to her, his expression serious. "Child, I owe you an apology. When your parents died, our community failed you. We were focused on our own comfort rather than our responsibility to all our people." Lena didn't know what to say. An elder apologizing to someone of her low status was unheard of. "I brought something for your new home," Elder Morrow continued, holding out a small package wrapped in shimmering fabric. "It is traditional for Norian elders to give a blessing gift to new households." With trembling hands, Lena unwrapped the package. Inside was a beautiful crystal that glowed with a soft blue light, a memory stone, used by Norians to store family histories and important memories. "This contains recordings of traditional songs and stories," Elder Morrow explained. "So you may learn of your heritage while building your future." Tears filled Lena's eyes. "Thank you, Elder." After Elder Morrow left, Tom and Lena returned to work. There was still much to do: finish the insulation, complete the garden space for growing food, install the security system. But now they worked with certainty rather than fear. As the day progressed, more visitors came, some offering help, others seeking advice for their own projects. A group of young Norians arrived, curious about Lena's innovations. Human engineers asked Tom detailed questions about his designs. By sunset, what had once been a lonely junkyard had transformed into a bustling community space where ideas and cultures merged freely. Standing in the doorway of her new home, Lena watched as Tom explained the solar panel configuration to an interested group. She thought of her parents and hoped they would be proud of what she had become, not just a survivor, but a builder, an innovator, a bridge between worlds. The tiny house, built from discarded scraps that no one wanted, now stood as a symbol of possibility. Like Lena herself, it had been overlooked and underestimated. And like her, it had found purpose and beauty through patience, skill, and the simple kindness of someone who saw value where others saw only junk. "Ready for dinner?" Tom called. Lena smiled and nodded. "Yes," she said. "I'm home."